Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Matt, Cryptic if you prefer, and today we're going to talk about the 5 most common mistakes that I see beginner, intermediate, and even some advanced artists making when it comes to their 3D art. Now, if you're making these mistakes, by no means does it mean that you're a bad artist or does it mean that you're doing things horribly wrong. It just means these are common things I notice that people do that could be corrected with a little bit of guidance. So let's not make this intro too long and let's just jump right into the video. Okay, so mistake number 1 that I notice a lot of artists make is you are not organizing your projects. A lot of people don't tend to focus on the organizational structure of their projects, and instead they'll just kind of throw things wherever they belong. And I get it. I used to do that a lot. For the longest time, I didn't really realize what Maya's project management system was and how to create your own projects and then follow their folder structure and their unique way of navigating and storing your files. This is super important because when you go back to look at your old projects, you're not going to be able to have everything clustered in one organizational structure if you're not following what your application suggests that you follow. Does this mean you have to use the default one? Not really. You can still kind of make things work, but most applications are built on the premise that you're going to use their organizational structure. Maya is pretty picky about making sure that you use the folder structure that they establish because it allows Maya to universally look through the folder structures when you set up your project and say, okay, cool, this is where my textures are, this is where my renders are, this is where everything else is, this is where everything exists. It's super important to get to know your application's folder structure in order to understand how you should be setting up your projects, because it's only going to help you in the long run. Again, is this necessarily a major requirement? Not really, but it is something that I find is really helpful for beginner artists to kind of understand how to save things and how to organize everything. And then it's super important if you plan on getting a job in the industry and working with teams of people that already have the setup folder structures that they follow and the different organizational structures that they have to work within in order to keep their projects clean and organized. Mistake number 2. This one's kind of important because you're not trying new things. And I understand that a lot of it comes down to just getting comfortable. We get comfortable doing the creative pieces that we do and the art that we make, and the last thing we want to do is get out of that comfort zone. But it's so important as a new artist or even as an intermediate artist to try new things, to go outside of your comfort zone and look at things and figure out what you can do that's going to either help improve your work or just give you a new challenge. This doesn't necessarily mean you need to change your entire thing. So if you're working to be a hard surface modeler, for instance, you don't need to go ahead and just jump over to organic modeling, because that's going to be such a big shift that there's kind of a lot there to figure out. But it does mean that, if you primarily model weapons, go try doing a vehicle, go try doing a spaceship, something new, something bigger, something outside of your comfort zone, because in the end, that's how you're going to grow as an artist. So trying new things is very important. Regardless of what you decide to try, you're going to learn some skills along the way that are going to be really helpful in the future when you're working on your projects. Mistake number 3, and this is the big one, and I make this mistake a lot. You try to do everything. This is something that I always do, and this is something that I have kind of just established that is like my personality, is I try to do everything. I am very much the kind of person that fits into what you would consider a generalist. So I like to understand the entire process. And that's totally cool if you're the kind of person that can handle that, and if you're the kind of person that has the mental capacity to continue working in every section of a 3D application. But for 90% of people who are just doing 3D art in general, or who are trying to actually lock down on a specific portion of 3D art, you don't have to know how to do everything. I say this a lot, but you do need to show proficiency in what you do, but you don't have to know everything. So if you're a modeler, you don't necessarily need to know rigging. You should know how to model for rigging. That's important. You don't have to know how to go in and rig everything and set up all the different constraints and all that stuff. You don't have to know that. So when it comes to people who try to do everything, I suggest kind of pulling back a little bit, filter down a little bit more on what you need to know and then what skills you need to help set you above, but also don't overstress yourself and overstretch yourself. You don't need to know all this stuff, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you feel you do, then do, but also make sure you know that you can handle that, because the last thing you want to do is go through burnout because you tried to do too much and you can no longer carry on trying to learn everything and do everything. It's so important to make sure that you understand both your limits as a person, but also your limits as an artist. Let's talk about mistake number 4. And this is one that kind of drives me nuts a little bit. And it's relying too much on automated tools. I get it. There are a lot of aspects of 3D art that genuinely suck, like UV unwrapping, retopology, things like that. They're not fun. But the last thing you want to do is get used to using an automated tool that just does things to an okay level or a usable level, but not having the base understanding of how to do it manually. When it comes to going from company to company, many companies have their own different processes for doing things. And a lot of the times they're not going to rely on automated tools unless it's more of an industry standardized tool. So it's important to learn the actual ins and outs of what you're doing. So when it comes to things like UV unwrapping, I get it. Just hitting auto unwrap and then throwing textures on it and not caring about seams is fun and great. But if you don't understand the fundamentals of how to hide seams and how to unwrap a model properly, the automated tool isn't going to help you. So if your goal is just to create things for social media that don't really matter, sure, that's fine. That's not a big deal. But if your goal is to take your art to the next level and to take your skills to the next level, you need to stop relying so heavily on automated tools. I see a lot of complaints come from when people use too much of like ZRemesher or too much of the auto retopology tools in Maya, because they just kind of do an okay job, but it's never like a good enough job, especially when it comes to characters where you need to work on like facial topology and you need to make sure that the topology on the character is usable for animation. Those automated topology tools are not going to help you there. Maybe this will change in the future, but at the current state, automated tools don't help all that much. So it is really important to have a base level knowledge. And then, of course, if you want to use them later on, use them later on, but at least understand the process, because that is the most important part about that. And mistake number 5. This is one that I think we're all guilty of, but you don't practice enough. And what do I mean by practicing? Because, if we're working in 3D, we're always working in 3D, but practicing to me is finding things where you know that you need to improve and working on them. So, for instance, if you know you need to practice topology, start doing small base projects on how to focus on building model topology and building it correctly and cleanly and efficiently. And a lot of the times this does mean like you're not going to be working on some big fancy awesome project that you're going to get to share to Instagram and have a ton of likes and everything like that. But at the same time, it means you are learning and growing as an artist. So practice is so important. And it's also okay to say like this larger project that I'm doing is going to be practice for me, because as long as you're challenging yourself within that project to learn new skills and learn new things, you can still consider that practice. But it's always important to kind of pull back a little bit, find small projects that you can practice on and focus on that. So if you want to work on like realism, find a small project, model a pair of sunglasses or something. Focus on what you're trying to learn and get better at and practice it. Don't worry about it being some super awesome, amazing project that you're going to throw in your portfolio and it's going to blow up. Make sure it's something that helps you as an artist. And I know it's kind of like the last thing a lot of us want to do is just kind of pull back and work on something small, but even I do it. I spend time to do small mini projects throughout my big projects to make sure I'm still practicing skills that maybe I'm not using, or maybe I know that I'm lacking in, because that is so important as an artist in any art form. And this goes for anything like drawing, whatever. You need to practice the little things in order to maintain your skill sets to be able to do the big things. So that's super, super important. But this was a short video, just kind of 5 things that I find that I see a lot of artists making mistakes on. Let me know if there are more that you can think of. Leave them down in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you like this video, maybe we can do more 5 mistakes videos or 5 things that artists are doing. I don't know. Like, this could be a whole series. If it's something that you guys enjoy, let me know. But with that said, that's the end of this video. I appreciate you watching. If you haven't yet, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, because it does help me grow and continue what I'm doing here on YouTube. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, I do have a Patreon. You can join it in the link in the description. But until then, I will see you in the next video.